Welcome to the Exam Study Expert Podcast, helping you ace your exams at school and university through the psychology of high performance and the science of studying smarter, not harder. It's my pleasure to introduce your host, the Cambridge-trained memory psychologist and exam success coach, William Wadsworth.
Hello and welcome to the Exam Study Expert Podcast. And if you're listening to this episode soonish after it comes out, then wishing you a very happy start to your year. It's lovely to be back with you. If you're listening to this in the future, then I hope the year is treating you well wherever you are in the calendar cycle. My guest for today's episode is Nkechi L. Ifediora, a doctor, director, mum, executive coach, writer and influencer who's built a large following through her practical and compassionate advice on, as she puts it, living smart. In today's conversation, we're figuring out how some of her favourite principles apply to students, including how to set effective boundaries with your friends and family, and particularly yourself, how to build your community, and how to stay connected with your sense of purpose. Without further ado, let's meet Nkechi and dive right into today's episode.
So hi everyone, and Happy New Year. Welcome to 2025. I'm really pleased to be on this show. I've got lots to share about my book Sparkle and my motivation for writing it, and I'm really hoping it will help you. My name is Nkechi. I wear several hats. The hats that I'm wearing in the context of this particular show are the hats of writer of Sparkle and a mummy of 3. My 2 eldest children have been end-to-end through the educational system. So they're both graduates, both have really good jobs working in the city. And so obviously lots of learning bringing them up. And so it's been really great to, write the book, drawing on all of my experiences. So not just as a mummy and as obviously my day job as an executive and all the other things I do in the charity and not so charity sector. So really pleased to bring it all together and hopefully share some nuggets that hopefully viewers will find helpful in some shape or form.
Very excited to talk to you. Welcome to the show. I wondered if you could just give us a flavour of what Sparkle is, or maybe what a sparkly person looks like, what a sparkly life is like. What's that all about for you?
Great question. So I'll start with why I actually wrote Sparkle. So the full title is Sparkle, the ABC of Smarter Living. I'm really passionate about people, communities achieving their full potential. And I believe that when purpose and potential are aligned, people truly sparkle. I'm very passionate about supporting people to be the best that they can be. And hopefully my book helps to do some of that. It helps people, I believe, to live a more balanced life, navigate life intentionally, aligned to their purpose and with self-care. So someone that's sparkly has that alignment going on, as the kids would say, that alignment of potential and purpose. And it's really wonderful, that radiance, because there are record numbers of people, including students, young people, unfortunately experiencing burnout because they're trying to be all things to all people. And I don't think it has to be that way. We don't have to live life by default. We can make conscious decisions about how we show up. We can live in a way that's more aligned to our purpose, and we can live more intentionally. And actually, I believe that's why we're here on this earth, to live and fulfill our purpose. And when you think about purpose as that intersection between our strengths, our values, and our passions, informed by our life experiences, it kind of makes it easier to really break it down, why it's so important for us to live in that way, because that should in turn inform our priorities and the things that we give our time and our energy to. It should also help us to clarify our preferences. One of my many key messages is that you're the gatekeeper of your own life. You do have a choice about how you live it.
That's beautiful. So I wonder if we could just dive straight in. You mentioned you have these kind of A, B, C, D principles to help us on our way to sparkling. Perhaps just give us an overview of those 4 ideas.
Absolutely. So I've got what I call the ABCD framework. where A is for accept and assess. So first you embrace your current circumstances while objectively evaluating areas for improvement. And I believe that really fosters a mindset of self-awareness and growth. And then you've got B, which is boundaries and values. Boundaries is about how you protect your time and your energy. And I believe that defining your personal boundaries and your core values really empowers you to make decisions aligned with your authentic self and overarching life goals. And then I've got C, which is around community. I strongly believe that exploring the significance of cultivating meaningful connections and nurturing supportive networks really helps you to recognize that collective strength and enrichment that community brings to your life. And then I've got D, which is around mastering that art of decision making with clarity and with confidence, using the insights that you've gained from, the acceptance, the assessment, the boundary setting, and understanding the strength of your community. So that's that in a nutshell, but obviously there's a lot more information in the book.
I wondered if we could start on the second point of the frame. I mean, it's all interesting. It's all good stuff. I think one area I thought might be particularly interesting to double click on was B, boundaries.
Yeah.
It's a really important set of points you make about boundaries and the importance. And it's a real challenge, I think, for a lot of the people listening to this show. I know that from talking to people over the years. I thought maybe I'll just give you a couple of case studies, a couple of little sort of mini case studies, and just sort of let you react to those and see what you think. So one I wanted to mention was, this is a woman studying for her exams with children. And, there's tension in the home with her partner regarding carving out her time for her studies on top of a day job as well. And, I'm saying woman. In theory, it could be a man, but it's a story I hear more often with the gender roles that way around. And then the other one is a young person, so teenager, whose friends constantly expect them to be online, responding to messages through the evening, making it harder to focus on schoolwork and complete, their work on time and to a high standard. And in both cases, these are not sort of specific individuals. They're sort of just general stories I've heard quite a few times in different guises. Where do we start with kind of establishing boundaries with our family, with our friends, particularly when it comes to carving out the time we need to progress our academic goals?
Yeah, so I'm going to use a few examples from my own life. And I remember, obviously, bringing up my own 3 children, working a full-time job, studying at the same time and doing just loads of stuff. And actually, I use one of those examples within the book. And I got help, basically. You can't do it on your own. It's just not possible. I had a babysitter, and actually the example I give within the book is having a babysitter who let me down at the last moment because I had to go into central London for a particular phase of the programme. And in the end, I took all 3 children with me, which was very interesting. And I came back and I made some changes because I thought, well, actually, I need to be very intentional about the community that I'm cultivating around me. Like, who can I call on to help me with certain things? It's also about being really clear with the people around you, what those priorities are. Obviously, being part of a family, you'd hope that everybody in the family is signed up to that goal of completing your studies, because at the end of the day, completing your studies is going to be a win-win for everybody within that household. So it takes having some of those really intentional, gentle conversations with the people around you and being really clear right at the get-go what support you'll need. And obviously, if it's not clear that you're going to get that support from those in your immediate inner circle, it might well be there's a further conversation about, who else needs to help and what else needs to be done to support some of those other priorities that are in your life. I like to talk about the concept of, when you're cooking, and this is how when I talk about things like balance, because I believe that balance is dynamic. I don't think you ever achieve balance and you go, ta-da, I've achieved balance, because it's like an equilibrium. It's dynamic, isn't it? And let's say you're cooking, and certainly for me, it's my front left burner, which is a bit hotter than the others and a bit faster. So I might be, cooking my rice on that one. I might have the onions simmering somewhere in the background. There's always something that's going to be a massive priority at that point in time. And I think it's just understanding that equilibrium, that sometimes some things will need to just taper down a bit so that you can focus a bit more on something else. But for that to work, you do need to cultivate that community around you to help you with some of that. And then obviously in terms of the other example of the young person whose friends expect him or her to be online all the time, I've had a bit of that in my household as well.
Yeah.
And
It's a tricky one.
it's a tricky one, but it's getting into that habit of really focusing on the long game, basically. What's the purpose and what's the long-term goal? Because I know in the world we live in at the moment, it's almost like an Uber context where everything is like, you have it now, that instant gratification. But sometimes we need to delay gratification to achieve our priorities and our goals. And sometimes it's just those real intentional conversations with the people around us, whether friends, and then just being really kind of strict and disciplined with yourself, saying, I need to forego some of this instant gratification so that I can achieve something a bit more meaningful in the longer term. So all of those cases, sometimes you just need to have those boundaries with yourself sometimes.
Yeah, it's tricky. And with the friends example, I think one of the reasons it's hard for people is you don't want to kind of risks your social relationships. You talk about the importance of community, and I think particularly as a young person, you're sort of developing your social skills and you're developing your network for the first time, and you perhaps don't yet have the same confidence that you might have as an adult to say, well, okay, look, if this relationship isn't working, I'll make it work somewhere else. Quite a nerve-wracking thing to do, to potentially feel like you're jeopardizing a relationship.
But I suppose it's how, isn't it? Because sometimes you might say, well, actually, for talk's sake, 10 minutes of the day, I'm going to spend a bit of time texting my friends, sending them WhatsApp messages or whatever, and then being really clear with your friends that I'm so sorry, but, from such a time to such a time, I'm studying. Put out a little emoji or something. Ooh, again, I know.
No, let's do the strong arm emoji, definitely.
You can do the strong arm, you can do the whatever works. And then, you're back online next week or 2 weeks' time or whatever. And if they're really your friends and they really care about you and your priorities and your goals, I'm sure they'll understand. So, yeah.
I guess the other kind of aspect of boundaries, again, going back to sort of older scholars, is boundaries with colleagues. If you're trying to balance your studies around a day job, again, that challenge of sort of carving out time in and around the workday to progress your studies. I mean, some of the things that I've come across that help people, things like sometimes putting a note in your email signature. I'm doing my work this time to this time, I'm going to be head down and studying. And particularly if that's going to be a change to what your colleagues or your clients expect from you, just that kind of clarity of communication can be quite a helpful thing. As much as anything else, it frees your mind to know that they know the deal, and it kind of helps reduce the worry.
And I think it's about being proactive and transparent with them. I mean, there's no point, pretending you're somewhere else when actually you're head down, studying. It's better to, agree some of those things up front. So, for example, if you're working, agree those things with your line manager, employer, that, you have protected study time, if that's a thing where you work, and obviously communicating that to clients, to friends, to acquaintances, even if that's appropriate and necessary. So being really upfront with that, because then there is something about that accountability as well, because people, they know, so therefore they expect that at that time you're studying and this is the way you're using that particular time block. I think it's really important. And at the end of the day, boundaries is about how you protect your time and energy. And I think certainly from my experience, creating that study schedule that respects your boundaries, for example, no distractions during study time, and that aligns to your goals, can only be helpful in the short and long term. So certainly from my experience. The other thing, I think people sometimes underestimate how much work and how much focus is actually needed. And I know I'm straying somewhat into the A, so they accept and assess. You need to be really clear, where you are at the moment. So acknowledging your current, academic strengths and weaknesses, and obviously just taking a moment to assess your habits, your focus areas, and your time management, because knowing where you stand has to be a really key first step towards improvement.
Definitely. I know you referenced the wheel of life in your book. I've got a version of that. I call it the wheel of studying, which is kind of like the different elements that go into making academic success. So some of the things you mentioned, how well you focus, your time, your routine, your approach to actually learning and memorizing, there's different bits and giving that clarity on, okay, well, I'm doing quite well over here, but actually this bit I could use some improvement on.
So it's just, and that assessment has to be honest, because obviously there's no point over egging it. Otherwise you can't have that tailored solution, which you need. Basically, you need something that works. And for that, you need to have that honest assessment of how are things right now and how do I need to improve them? So
honest, not too good, but also honest, not too bad either, having it, because you can have a tendency to go one way or the other, depending on how you're feeling about your studies at a given moment.
Exactly.
Anything else you think would be particularly helpful to mention on assess and the first part of the framework while we're over here?
Yeah, I suppose because A is about accept and assess, and as part of that, obviously accept that you're not Superwoman, you're not Superman. And it's worth just thinking about, are there some other aspects of your life where you might need help? Because obviously it's not all about your studies. It's about, how you show up in your home. And obviously we're not just talking about young people. We're talking about people who are actually living, as part of a family. It could be a couple, basically at home. And so things like, cleaning the house, gardening, at the best of times, even with nothing else going on, sometimes you might want to outsource some of that, but especially when you're incredibly busy, there might be things that, your other half or other members of the family expect you to do. Can some of that be outsourced so that you have a bit more time, to study and focus on some of those other priorities? Again, comes back to the cooking, the 4 plates of the cooker. Sometimes things might have to be a bit on that back burner while you focus on what's important at that time.
Yeah, no, I love that analogy. It's really nice. I think the idea that it's sort of similar to the idea of sort of seasons of life. One season might be study season now, but that's not to say that that's going to be the case forever. And but while we are in study season, it may be that, maybe some of our meals are a bit more simply prepared than normal, still nutritious, of course, but, maybe, not going out fully elaborate if that's what you're used to, or, the house might be not quite as spick and clean tidy as it normally is every single day, but, it will be all right. and you make some of those choices. And as you say, maybe even if it's only on a temporary basis, you get some of that help in, this may not be the season where you're stacking up a load of cash in the corner to go on a holiday. Instead, that goes towards the help you need to kind of free up a little bit of time.
Yeah, and it comes down to, and obviously delving into the C, how you kind of prioritize relationships and, the community around you. It's really important to find strength in collaboration and build a support system of, it could be peers, mentors, study groups. Certainly from my experience as, someone that has studied and obviously as a mum as well, sharing knowledge and encouragement can really help you to stay motivated and tackle challenges together. There might be a particular subject that you feel you're not as good at as some of the other subjects. So that might need a bit more time, a slightly different approach, more engagement with peers who are a bit better. So, you can never go wrong with just being very intentional about your networking and your collaboration.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. So I think just one quick follow-up thought on the community piece. One of the great things about working together is some of the benefits you mentioned. Get that support, get that help. I guess one of the downsides I sometimes come across with people working together is you start to compare yourself to peers, and you have that sense that, they're doing really well, they've got it all figured out, and like I'm so far behind. So many people I talk to feel that they're behind. Almost everybody I talk to feels they're behind in some way. And it's just that sense. And I think that those kind of peer comparisons contribute to that sense of feeling behind, because you're looking at the outward presented image of other people, which is always going to be a little bit shinier than the reality. Any thoughts on that particular challenge?
Yeah, I mean, we're all different. And I think there's something about self-compassion and self-validation as well. So some of us are constantly, and it's not criticism, sometimes it just happens that we're constantly looking outside ourselves for validation. And I suppose it's, through effective and consistent preparation, you kind of get to that place where more often than not, you kind of know what good looks like. And so therefore there's less comparison and there's more confidence. That was certainly, something that I went through, taking, some of those really intense exams back in the day. I remember, one particular exam that I was taking, I think it might have been anatomy actually. So where I was sitting next to someone who kept asking for more and more paper. And I was like, oh my God, is this the same exam that we're taking? Why do they need all this paper? But I suppose because of the way I had prepared, and it was quite, consistent, I knew I was studying the right things, and I had got to a stage where I was basically looking internally for some of that validation rather than constantly looking outside for that external validation. I felt, quite confident, and I was like, I reframed it, and I thought, okay, it could be that they haven't quite got it right.
Yeah.
And that's why they feel they have to do all this writing. And they could have been like on the way to a distinction or something. But I think through doing that work, on myself, because obviously there's the work you do in collaboration, but that is not a substitute for the work that you have to do on yourself and with yourself to make sure that you have the right confidence, the right capacity and the right capability for some of these exams. So it's an and. The collaboration is not replacement for the work that you have to do with and on yourself. That's certainly from my experience.
Definitely. Good. Well, should we bring it home with the D then? So decisions.
So the decisions, obviously, you're taking everything that's gone before. You're taking the assessment that you've done in terms of, how much do you need to improve? What are the things that you might need to do differently? How much outsourcing do you need to do? The boundary setting, being really clear about your values, being quite intentional about how you want to take everything forward, the collaboration, the community, the study group. So you take all of that, and then you're really intentional about your decisions, and you choose to study smarter, not harder, informed by all of that information that you've been gathering and all of that experience. And there are so many tools and techniques out there, William, aren't there? So there are techniques such as, time blocking to make study sessions more effective. With the information that you've garnered, you'll be more intentional about what you focus on each day. So, for example, in my uni days back in the day, I knew that anatomy was one area that I probably needed to spend a bit more time on. So that helped inform my decision making about how I allocated time to the various subjects that I was studying. So being really intentional about what you focus on based on, your assessment, your boundaries, your values, and also, the community around you is really important. Some areas may need a bit more work. And then obviously you just take all of that forward. So it's very exciting. But I know that obviously it's ABCD, but there's other stuff to consider as well. I'm a big believer in purpose-driven learning. And what do I mean by that? It's about connecting your studies to a bigger goal. So reflecting on how your education aligns to your purpose and your future aspirations, because I believe that knowing your why can fuel your motivation for actually, studying successfully. Why are you doing this? Is it just to get a series of letters after your name? Is there a bigger purpose to studying and acing those exams? So that's certainly something that I've found, really helpful, particularly with my postgraduate studies, where, sometimes I'll just say to myself, with the children and everything else going on, why am I doing this again? But then, I'd remind myself, what I intended to achieve with either the additional qualification or the additional learning, and, how it would be really helpful in, a better life for my family. And that was always really helpful to kind of spur me on and, look away from some of those short-term discouragement or inconvenience to something bigger and better, a real vision for my life and the life of my family.
With a big enough why, any how becomes possible.
Oh, I love that.
We talked in a bit of detail about the power of purpose and and some of the reasons that people might have to study. You mentioned some very powerful ones just now.
Yeah.
It's quite a personal thing. So there's all sorts of different reasons why people might study. And if you want to dig into that into a little bit more detail, episode 99 is a good one to go back to. So, but yeah, no, it's a really, really good point to make, really good reminder. Wonderful. And Nkechi, look, thank you so much for being so generous with your wisdom and all your kind of interesting thoughts on all of these things. Really, really interesting conversation. Is there anything else you think we should particularly know?
I just think, obviously, we're in a new year. It's a real opportunity for us to recalibrate and live smarter and navigate life more intentionally. And if there's anything that, I can do, William can do to help with that, whether it's in the book or whether it's a follow-up conversation, more than happy to help. I'm very passionate about helping young people. So
why don't we finish by just telling us a little bit about where we can find you? So if people want to cup the book or look up you, where would they go next?
Okay, well, the book is on Amazon. So as I said, it's called Sparkle, the ABC of Smarter Living. I think the easiest thing to get in contact with me, just contact William. He knows where I am.
Awesome. Okay, good. Well, look, thank you so much. Really, really enjoyed chatting today, and so many useful things for listeners. Definitely some really, really helpful thoughts today. So once again, thank you so much. And yeah, on behalf of us all, wishing you a wonderful start to your year as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, thanks again, Nkechi, for such a wonderful conversation. And to you, dear listener, go forth and sparkle. Thank you so much, as always, for listening today. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
If you've got exams coming up, you can now get all of William's favourite tips and tricks to save you time and get you higher grades, all in one handy cheat sheet. Grab your copy at examstudyexpert.com/free tips. Thanks again for listening, and see you soon.